Okay, I got a little break in work, waiting on some information. I've got about 30 minutes, so guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a story for you guys. Come on, come on. This is a story from Clay County, West Virginia, I believe. The writer doesn't give his name, but the story is pretty dang good. So hold on to your weaves and glue them dentures in. I grew up on a small mountain called Beachy Ridge in Clay County, West Virginia. It's one of the tallest mountains in the region. One afternoon in the summer of 1977, my mother and I were sitting on our front porch when all 7 of our dogs went on alert. As we looked around to find what had them on edge, a large animal ran on 2 legs from round the side of the house and crossed our front porch. It passed the light my dad had mounted on an oak tree. That light was 7 feet off the ground, and the animal was every bit as tall as that light, maybe taller. It was reddish-brown with long hair on its shoulders and arms. The dogs all began to chase after it, but less than 5 minutes later, they all came running back with their tails tucked. Not long after that, we had a visit at night. My dad worked a midnight shift at a coal mine 40 miles away in Wyden. We kept 2 of our dogs inside with us. Dad had already left for the night when they began barking at the front and back doors. Something was walking around the outside, and then bam! Whatever was out there had slapped the side of our house, and the dogs went silent. The smaller one went under the bed, and the larger one, pretty boy, he hopped up on the couch with my younger brother. "Go get the shotgun," my mother whispered as she hung a blanket over the front door to cover the multiple glass panes. When I came back with the gun, she was lighting a fire in the stove. Well, it was summertime and hot, and I gave her a strange look, and she said, "It'll keep 'em from getting on the roof." It was the longest night of my life. We went around the house and covered all the windows before joining my brother on the couch. Mama read the Bible with the loaded shotgun laying across her lap and pointed at the door. A commotion came from the chicken coop. My brother and I looked helpless at our mother. Tears were welling up in our eyes. "We'll have to sacrifice some chickens tonight," she said with a calm voice that did nothing to disguise the haunted look in her eyes. "It's the price we have to pay to save our own lives," she added. The next morning, when Dad came home, we were missing 24 chickens. Something had ripped off the roof of the coop. It looked like it had eaten at least 3 of them right there. Dad said there were 6 chicken feet and some feathers there by the fence, but the rest of the chickens were gone. He said the boogers got 'em. "Have you ever seen a booger before?" my mother asked. She told me about when she was a little girl and lived in a small lumber mill boomtown in Clay County. My mother was born during World War II, and her father worked in the mill operating the creosote tanks for the railroad ties. They lived in a house at the end of the road on top of a hill. Mama and her sister walked through the woods every day to and from school and up and down that hill. One day, she and her sister had dilly-dallied around the mercantile store buying a poke of penny candy and playing with her friends after school. Suddenly they realized the sun was beginning to set, and they knew they had to get home quick. Their mom would have supper on the table soon. They raced up the hill toward home, and they decided to take the shortcut through the woods to save time. They'd only gone a few yards when they began to hear heavy footsteps behind them. It was late summer, so the leaves were still on the trees. It made the woods much darker than the rest of the world, so they couldn't see who was following them. "We have candy and you can have it. Just leave us alone," they yelled, thinking it might be one of the older boys trying to prank them. Satisfied that they'd sufficiently told off the older boy, they continued walking, a little faster now. Despite their bravado, they were a little frightened. As they moved faster, so did their stalker. And Mama's little sister panicked then and took off running, leaving her standing in the woods crying. "You're scaring me," Mama cried as she looked all around her. "Stop it!" But the footsteps were getting closer. She took off at a brisk pace, but the footsteps were keeping up with her. And every once in a while, as she made her way up the hill, she glanced back over her shoulder, hoping to get a glimpse of whoever was back there. Finally, she reached the clearing in the woods where a house had once been, but had long since burned down. She looked back again, and this time she saw a massive black figure covered in hair. She dropped her candy and books as she broke into a dead run with tears running down her cheeks, and her lungs felt as though they would burst, but she didn't stop till she got to the front door of her own house. My grandmother was standing there waiting for her with a switch in her hand, but when she saw the look on Mama's face, she pulled her into her arms. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, brushing away her tears. "There's a monster chasing me, Mama." "Are you sure?" Grandmother asked. "Yes, it was big and black and it was covered in hair." Mama's words were coming in short blasts between gulps of air. "I dropped my candy and books at the old burnt house," she explained. My grandma thought to herself that Mama might have seen a hobo. She wiped away her tears and gave her a hug and sent her inside to clean up for supper. That night, after my grandfather got home and the children were in bed, Grandma told him what happened. Grandfather took his flashlight and pistol and walked down to the old burnt house to have a look around. And there he found my mother's books with 3 pieces of candy set on top of them. The bag and the rest of the candy were gone, and he saw what he thought were bear tracks in the area, but that was it. In 1952, when my mother was 7 and her sister was 5, there was no information out there on Bigfoot. People here in West Virginia had to go on what they knew. Back then, they knew about bears and hobos and boogers in the woods. As for my mother, until the day she died at age 71, she never went in those woods alone again. Thank you very much to the writer for sending this. That's the only story I'm putting in this podcast because I'm trying to finish up a job. I just had a break. I thought I'd knock this out real quick. I'm going to go edit it and put it up on the podcast right away. And as of probably this Friday, I'm going to be totally out of work and full-time podcasting, thanks to Putin's recession. Yeah, it's Putin's recession. I am out of work, and I'm not going to hunt for work. I'm actually going to see over the next couple of months if I can scratch out a living doing this podcasting. So if you guys want to help me doing that, I would appreciate it. Tell your friends about the podcast, either on the podcast network under What If It's True, or refer them to the Dixiecryptid YouTube channel. I would really appreciate that because the more people that watch, the better chance I have of making a living out of this. And I'm going to give it a whirl, and we're going to see what happens. And if you enjoyed this story, please share the podcast. Thanks. Okay, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Won't be long.